It's Friday night and it's time to party with your host, Wayne Campbell. And with him, as always, is Garth. Party on, Wayne, and party on, Garth. This is Two on One, the internet's top sensation, where for the 100th time, we gather with a theologian to talk about pop culture, theology, and its intersections. I am one of your co-hosts, the Reverend Arthur Stewart.
Party on, Arthur.
Party on, Spiff.
I'm your other co-host, not just a sidekick to Wayne. Garth Algar, aka the Reverend Stephanie Kendall. I am so excited, Arthur.
I'm so excited. I am super excited. It's episode number 100. We've somehow done this and sustained this 100 times.
That is wild and wonderful. And our Deuces know. I've been calling for a Wayne's World episode. I'm a big SNL fan. It is, I think I wore my necklace for the when we did SNL with Terry, and I'm wearing it again because Wayne's World is in my easily top 5 favorite movies. But also, I quote it daily. daily.
Okay. I did not realize how much my preaching is influenced by the narrative arc of Wayne's World, like how they do cuts and asides and like there is so much random access that was just embodied in me when I was a child.
Same. I saw this movie in the theater at 9 years old, which what 9-year-old should be watching this? Everyone.
Had the VHS and memorized it when I was 7. I get it.
So good. And our guest today is truly one of my favorite people. I consider him my pastor. I love him very much. I'm so excited that he said yes to our 100th episode with Wayne's World.
Well, it was just kind of perfect. It's like things are lining up and everything's coming up roses.
It is.
So you may know this by now. You may know a few things. Number one, I'm doing a study on the Corinthians letters.
Ding, ding.
I'm now in letter D. I'm in chapters 10 through 13. I'm almost done.
Big D, little D. Sorry.
Well, second,
that's what she said. Oh, come on. It's a perfect. That's what she said.
Yeah, all the time. And I love it. You have those weird innuendos and it's a great thing. I think that's number 100. And as you know, Stephanie, 2 on 1 is sponsored by Jeff Wonroe Designs.
Jeff Wonroe Designs has been creating contemporary liturgical textiles since 2005.
That means for the last 17 years, they've been making ordinary time extraordinary with stoles, banners, paraments, frontals, altar accessories, chasubles, copes, the occasional mitre, and of course, liturgical face masks.
You can see a huge catalog at jeffwonroe.com to see how these exquisitely crafted pieces have enhanced and inspired a wide variety of interfaith and ecumenical clergy and congregations.
You can also see customization options.
Oh, let me tell you about those customization options. Arthur, I ordered this stole. Not that we are sellouts. We are just proud of our sponsors.
Oh, no. Hey, I ordered an Eastertide face mask. It's little, yellow, different. Anyways, please keep going.
Deuces, you're going to get a lot of Wayne's World references today. But I did. I ordered this stole. It is cut for my height. It has a chalice on the back or on my nape. It has the protest fist, as you all know. I have the ordination, or one of my ordination texts sewn in on the inside. It is mine. It is beautiful, and it is perfect.
Well, where can I go to get my customized stole, Stephanie?
After the show, Arthur, you can go to jeffwonroe.com to see the full catalog and customization options. Be sure, Deuces, to use the code 2on115. The 15 is digits, not letters, for 15% off your entire stole purchase.
And now, in honor of our 100th episode and Wayne's World, of course, we're going to wrap in this commercial. So come get a stole that still steals the show. It's hip, it's fresh, it's Jeff Wonroe. Word. Okay, we apologize for rapping, but it makes sense in the context of this marvelous 90s movie. Let's bring in Mark.
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
We're not worthy. Mark Bryley, welcome to 2 on 1. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
So excited to have you. Mark, thanks for coming on. It's our 100th episode. We waited a whole 100 episodes of, the monthly me asking you, hey, Mark, when are you going to come on 2 on 1? And we finally gotcha for not only one of my favorite movies, but truly a monumental 2 on 1 day.
Yeah, Kay, congratulations on 100. That's amazing, and certainly honored to be with you. I know you'd asked me about coming on before, and this is an Enneagram 9 thing, I think, because you were always like, hey, think of something you want to talk about, and then, I'm always like, my presence doesn't really matter. I don't know. It's like you give 9 a choice, and so when I hear from you this week, and it's like, hey, how about Wayne's World? And I'm like, okay, we can do that. We could do that. So
Wait,
grateful.
Deuces, who may be 9s or otherwise, like, I don't know what I want to talk about. Spiff and I literally have a list of episodes we want to do, but we're not going to force a choice on people. So, like, if you're thinking I can talk about anything, I just don't know where to start, hit us up.
Yeah.
That will not stop you.
Hey, excellent.
Yes. Mark, who are you? What do you do? What's your deal?
Yeah, so I'm Mark Bryley. I serve as lead pastor at Broadway Christian Church in Middle America, Columbia, Missouri, which is not far from where I grew up. So after going to school and having some ministry experience and seminary experience in Indianapolis and Tulsa, we came home in 2019, the fall of 2019, before the world shut down. And it's good. We're glad to be here. My wife is from this area. Her family's still here. And our kids, we have 3 kids. They were of the age where we felt we could make a move. And so that call all lined up at the right time. I got to say, the church I'm serving, when I was in college, I lived in the apartments next door. I worked at the bank on the other side of the church. And the hoop that's in the parking lot that is still there is where I shot baskets, just as a college kid trying to blow off some steam. So anyway, it's good to be back around some ground that has meant a lot to me. With some people that I'm honored to serve. So we've loved everywhere we've been, but this is where we are now, and grateful for it.
Where did you grow up? You said near here.
Yeah, near here is an hour north of Columbia, which is where the University of Missouri is. I grew up in Macon, Missouri, which is just
because all roads lead to Macon.
Hey, that's right. Spiff's got some connections there, which is amazing. Nobody's got reason to have connection there. But I'm grateful for the community that raised me, and honored to share it as a place that has some meaningful connection to you, Spiff, in particular.
That's awesome.
Deuces that don't know, I do consider Mark my pastor, and so I love him dearly, and so we're very excited to have you on. And I mean, at least you're not like Wayne living in your parents' basement, so I think you're fine. You're growing on up there, Mark.
We have an
working at it
of hairnets and name tags.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so let's talk about Wayne's World for a second, because we had talked about this before you came in from the green room, and I think it's an important thing. Like, I did not realize that I still have Wayne's World memorized probably 30 years after I watched it every day, because my parents thought it was a fine movie for a 7-year-old to watch and memorize. I specifically remember asking, what does it mean he blows goats? I have proof. And my dad's like, we're not talking about that today. And we never have. And I'm going to call him after this episode and be like, is it time to talk about that yet? But like, what is it about Wayne's World? Why Wayne's World, Spiff? Why Wayne's World, Mark?
Yeah, Mark, what's your relationship with Wayne's World?
Yeah, so 1992, right, when the movie came out. So 30 years this year. That seems crazy to think about. Which put me right in the middle of middle school. So, your most awkward phase, 7th grade. And at that time in the early 90s, that was like probably some colorful jam shorts and maybe a jam shirt that matched, or Umbros. Umbros were kind of a thing.
Hypercolor?
What's that?
Hypercolor?
Hypercolor, probably. Tight roll jeans, those kinds of things. That's where we're living at that time. Certainly some pudgy years for me. I mean, I was like thinking about growing, but not quite yet. And so all the awkwardness of 7th grade was my world when this came out. I was certainly an SNL fan, and so I had some familiarity with the sketch, and loved all of that. But it was 7th grade humor, right? I mean, it really hit that target audience. And so it was everywhere in the hallways. I mean, all of the, all the sayings just kind of keep popping up all the time. And like at least a dozen people a day had shirts that said "not" on it, right? And or the whole, extreme close up. You couldn't go to social studies without somebody like getting in your face. And
extreme close up.
That was it. I mean, so it spoke our language. at the time. And so that's where I was. And, you know, I was in that groove. It was good.
Awesome. How long had it been since you've seen it? Because I know that you just watched it with your son when we were like, hey, Wayne's World. How long had it been since middle school, since you've seen it? Or had you watched it in college? Are you a daily watcher like I am?
I'm not, you know, I mean, it's probably been since those high school days. I mean, I'm sure I watched it again at some point there that I've seen it. So it was cool to watch it again. And my son just had his last day of 7th grade this week. And so I'm looking at him and I'm like, you know, 30 years from now, what are you going to be talking about that was like sort of influential, you know, culturally at the time? So, you know, I think I look at Wayne's World like a time capsule of the early 90s. It just like fit. And if you opened it and it was that movie, it would give you such a good sense of like just what was happening.
1992. It is like a frozen time capsule of all things 1992, which is lovely.
It is marvelous though, because so Wayne's World in the zeitgeist, right? It's the second Saturday Night Live movie, and it's 12 years after Blues Brothers comes out. And I think it's arguable as to whether or not Blues Brothers is a Saturday Night Live movie in the way that Saturday Night Live movie became a thing, right? Blues Brothers is completely detached from The Ladies' Man, from Superstar, from Roxbury, even from, oh God, what's the Andy Samberg one that killed Saturday Night Live movies? Not Superbad. Hot Rod. It's a different oeuvre. So in a kind of way, Wayne's World is like the beginning. I just don't compare Wayne's World to Blues Brothers.
It was the first time. So Lauren had a deal with Paramount, and like that's how all the like the Coneheads and everything, like all those movies kind of got made, which is why it feels different.
But I would argue Wayne's World was so big because it was Saturday Night Live and it was the rise of home video on VCR. It really was the start of how it was maybe one of the last gasps of we all have a common culture. The internet and social media has allowed us to, you know, I have to intentionally be in conversation with people I theologically disagree with on Twitter and Facebook. Like I have to look them up and I have to call my AA sponsor afterwards. But I think Wayne's World was one of those like last gasps of everybody has this humor. Everybody does Valley Girls. Every Delta, like, can I help you? And of course, Shawing.
Yeah. No, for sure. In that whole string of movies, I always was amazed that, I mean, Wayne's World really like set it off for everybody because, I mean, what was it, 20 million to make it? And they made like 180, I think, in the box office.
Exactly.
Which was huge. But then you had, like immediately they're like, well, we're going to keep cranking these out. And nobody else did as well. I mean, even, It's Pat, that became a movie.
Right. I forgot about it.
I saw it was 8 million to make it. It grossed 60 grand at the box office. So they all didn't take in the same way. And honestly, Wayne's World 2, I don't know that I saw it.
I saw it. It also did not do as well.
Because Penelope Spheris didn't come back because Mike Myers got way too big of a head about it.
That's one side of that story.
That is one side of that story, and I do love Mike Myers, and I would argue that Mike Myers is an actual comedic genius, and I don't use the word genius lightly. However, Wayne's World 2 was, well, if this works, it has to keep working, and this is where I want to talk about the church. Okay, so here's my theory, and I want us to pick it apart.
Okay.
Wayne's World worked because it was an unknown director doing what she knew how to do with actors who were not used to the format, like Garth's Undervite that he did. He could hold for 5 minutes. He hated filming because his face hurt by the end of the day. They were able to improvise. There was a fluidity, and they'd never done something like it before. And that's why this movie is such a gem. It's when they try to formalize it, or when they try to have a format that they have to meet with every other Saturday Night Live movie, because Wayne's World was the paragon that inevitably the system got broken until Andy Samberg like suffocated it to death with Hot Rod.
Hey, Andy.
And I would argue, Mr. Samberg, you did it correctly. Thank you. Like, I think Hot Rod's a hilarious movie. I want to talk about Hot Rod. It's not a good Saturday Night Live movie, which is the point. With the church, I think for the sake of security and safety and comfort, which are all important things, we will formalize worship. We will formalize the way church should be. But now we're seeing struggling gasps in a post-COVID world that was already moving in a post-Christian, postmodern way. This seems like a rant that would be better with an airplane noise over it. Spiff, if you just want to superimpose, and then you can't breathe, then you have to go to a doctor to have it pulled out of you. But I think the whole idea is like, how can the church embody the Wayne's World spirit of here's sketch comedians improvising a movie that nobody wanted, and it's something brilliant.
Yeah, the church, was a Garth's line. He says it's like a new pair of underwear. At first, it's restrictive, but then it just becomes a part of you. And
good.
And I think about that way with the church. Like we become such an insider. Like, and we got to own some of that ourselves too. We are the church, and I know we can tend to look at parts of the church where we're like, well, that's the bad part of the church, and we're not. We're all in this together. And so to be a part of the solution, I think is part of what we're called to do. But it's tough, and I heard some of those lines in the movie, and it's been a tough time to be a pastor. Even that first scene, right, where the Flowbee kind of thing, the vacuum is like getting Garth's hair, and he's like, "You're sucking my will to live," or whatever. It's like, what pastor hasn't felt that way in the last couple of years, maybe ever, but. And I'm not sure, that we can comfort other pastors the way Wayne does to Garth. He says, think of Heather Locklear in a forest, and you're warm, like that doesn't work. And so I think, we're kind of in a jaded time, and yet we're reckoning with a people who seek some comfort because things have been disrupted. And how do you balance those?
Yeah. I think Wayne's World works because we allow the spirit to move. I think we allow what you do and what you're passionate about to lead, right? We let the sketch people do the sketch things. They wanted a kind of a mockumentary feel to it. It's one of the first mockumentaries-ish. And so they got a documentary filmmaker to direct it. She had done, what was it? It's the Collapse of Western World or whatever those early documentaries were. And so she got to do that. And I think it was like when we've gotten away from letting people enjoy and name their passions and lead in that way, rather than saying, I need someone to read scripture and you read it great last time, so just do it, but if you don't like reading scripture, you like being at the table, but we already had someone lined up for the table, and it's like, we're not, it has become too formulaic in a way in which I think the parts are important, but have we invited those with gifts beyond what we see as part of the formula to come in and be? One of the best ways I think Wayne's World does this, and I am curious about how we might do this, is the Alice Cooper moment. Alice Cooper, they hire Alice Cooper, who is Alice Cooper, and in the 90s is Alice Cooper. And he thinks, like, Alice Cooper literally comes on thinking he's going to perform, and they hand him a monologue that he has to memorize about Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, the Algonquin term for it. But
the water's made.
And it's because they knew that there's more to Alice Cooper than his music, and that he was a history buff. And so they were like, here's a way in which we see you. Will you share that with a wider audience? And I don't know that we see our people as often beyond the, their musical genius, but like what makes them whole, right? Like the wholeness of our people. And so I'm curious, do you think we do that well? How might we do that better? Because we've got a lot of Alice Coopers, I guess, in our community that I want to know if they're historians, or I want to know if they, like, what do they know, and how might they change our viewpoint of not only them, but God at work in the world. Yeah,
Arthur, I know you were getting ready to speak. I don't want to hold you back.
No, I'm not trying to do that. I think it's joy, right? I think we do hope, we do peace, we do love really well, and we light a pink candle for joy, and we think joy is humor, and then we just get it lost. And as somebody who has had to explain to numerous friends, Joy Sunday, joy does not even have to be funny. Please stop trying to be funny. You're not, which is not a kind thing to say, but a true thing to say. We forget joy. Mike Myers, have y'all ever heard the story about how they wrote the opening to Goldmember, Austin Powers and Goldmember, the third one? Like, they're literally sitting there and they're like, okay, so great, it's this action sequence, and then like from the boots up you look and it's supposed to be Austin Powers, but it's Tom Cruise, and he says, yeah baby, and he's not going to do this, and then Danny DeVito is Mini-Me, and Gwyneth Paltrow's in it, and Kevin Spacey, because we can't all bat 1,000. And it works though, and then it turns out to be a movie inside a movie, and there's Steven Spielberg suggesting he's directed it, and literally they wrote it like, this is insane, ha ha ha, isn't this funny? And every single person said yes. And it's that expectation of, but what if things really lined up? How cool would that be? And we just lose sight of it. It's the Robert Patrick cameo in Wayne's World. It's completely unnecessary. It's so stupidly funny. And apparently they exist in the universe in which the Terminator happens. And
have you seen this boy? Ah!
Yeah. And just I love the walking to follow, and it's perfect. Probably took them 20 minutes to do it. And it's this beautiful moment. I don't know. Joy is, I think we forget it's okay to just simply have joy in the moment that happens, and it doesn't have to be profound, choreographed, or even really useful.
Yeah. I love the Alice Cooper piece too. To this day, if somebody says Milwaukee, I always I'm like,
Milwaukee.
It's really okay. Yes, Pete, it is. It always hits me. But to your point about that, when Mike's having that conversation with Tia Cassandra, right? And he says, he's quoting Kierkegaard, but he says, or is it Dick Van Patten, right? And he says, if you label me, you negate me. And, I hear you saying like, and we've kind of labeled everybody as, this is just kind of the thing you do, but there's so much more to people. And how do we do that? And we participate in the labeling stuff too. I mean, if somebody asks you, what do you do? Right. I mean, where's the hitch of like, well, I'm a pastor, because, as soon as that label is there, you're going to be negated by, any number of people. And so that, that's an interesting part of our reality. But I think in this time, who was it? Was it Garth or Wayne? Who was it? No, it was Wayne. He says, I thought I had mono for a whole year. Turns out I was just bored, and I look at like the church in the last 2 years, and people discovered a separation from the church. And so these are maybe your people that were not your diehard buy-ins, but people that were just sort of on the fringe, who thought, I thought I was interested in church. Turns out I was just bored, It turns out I stayed away because of COVID. Turns out I was just bored, or it wasn't authentic like I thought it would. And so I find myself, pastoring in this time, that whole fourth wall, breaking the fourth dimension or whatever, it's like you're talking to your church people, and at the same time you want to look at the camera or outside of the church and say, I get you, I understand what
get a load of this guy.
Yeah. So I think all of that was ringing a lot of bells for me, watching the film again. And then even some of the desperation, Garth and Wayne, they're laying there on top of the car at the airport. And he says, sometimes I wish I could go where no man has gone before, but I'll probably just stay in Aurora, and that's, I think sometimes you're like, we're going to change the world. We're going to go out and do this. And you have weeks like this week, we talked about what happened in Buffalo, and then you've got Uvalde and all this stuff. And it's like, you go out and you're like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And then it happens again. Sometimes, you just want to be in the basement and watch a 30-year-old comedy that takes you back to 7th grade. And, but we live in this constant tension, I think, of trying to exist and trying to change. It's an interesting reality.
And I think there's what are the stakes in Wayne's World? Like it always fascinates me, because the stakes in Wayne's World are minimal. He wants to be in relationship, and he would like his girlfriend to succeed. They don't have to save the world. They don't have to stop a satellite from crashing into the earth. They don't have to resolve gun violence in a 20-minute speech. They just have to do right by each other. And sometimes I think the church gets so complacent, and like, we're just going to have our fellowship meals and we're going to do our thing, and we might include a few new people. And sometimes I just want to like hold the entire church and be like, what you're doing is enough right now, but it can't be the only thing you do forever. Like there's got to be more than this formula.
Well, and the first thing you know about Wayne, it's like the first thing that comes out is he just wants to do Wayne's World like professionally, but not like he doesn't need to be the star. He just wants it. He just wants this to be his job. Like he wants his passion to lead his job. Who he wants to be a star is Cassandra. Like, and I really appreciated that as like, how often are we, in conversation and in community with people whose mindset is their own vocational success, our congregants are each other. Like, it isn't just a clergy thing or a specific church thing. It's an everyone thing. Everyone's like, capitalism has made us all want to be the biggest and the best. And Wayne very like just flat out is just like that's not my jam. But Cassandra, like, let's make sure like she rises to the top because that's what she wants. That's what she needs. And I really appreciated that. And I wonder how we can take a step back. I think we see that a lot in the political sphere right now. I think we see that a lot. I mean, I just think we see it a lot. But I think the church has a responsibility to say, the work we do here matters, right? It's not necessarily always about the big what's next. We don't need to be a mega church. We don't need 1,000 people in the pews. We need that one person whose heart's going to change, whose heart's going to grow closer to God through community and relationship and, scripture and all the things that we hope come out of what we are doing. And that those that need to succeed for whatever reason, ideally probably being God, do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's looking at Garth and Wayne are looking at the guitar that he wants, right? And he's one day it will be mine. But Garth says, live in the now. He says, live in the now.
Okay.
I say live in the now all the time. And I think now people are going to start hearing all my Wayne's World references and be like, oh, Spiff watches Wayne's World way too much. Because I say, if you were on the phone in front of me, I will say like, and I, whatever, I'll be like, who's Anthony? Who's Anthony? Like, and I've been saying that for 30 years.
So I just want to note that number one, I realized watching this movie, the guitar player who doesn't have the bangs in Crucial Taunt was probably my first authentic crush, because I looked at that guy and I was like, that is a truly attractive man. And sorry, that's something I'm going to talk about with my therapist, but like, you want to talk about the damn, I think, and mine is always, are you mental? Get the net. That's what I yell at people. Can we talk about Laura Flynn Boyle's Stacy for a second? I think the most famous line out of Wayne's World, it could be not or excellent or swing, but I think it's a gun rack. You bought me a gun rack. I do not own a gun, let alone many guns to necessitate an entire rack. It's such a beautiful takedown. What do we do with the Stacys in our life?
What do we do with the gun racks that we're given?
Right. Okay. I guess those would be Thomas Kincaid paintings. That's right. Shots fired from a gun I don't own.
Yeah, and I always say that, when they're playing hockey and she hits the car, and she pops up, she's okay. I mean, how many times do you say that when somebody falls and, or I must have fallen, right?
You know that Mike Myers wanted to take that out because he didn't think it was funny because it's her getting hurt, and the test audiences laughed at it every single time, so they kept it in, which again, violence against women, that's a whole other issue, but like it's this show nuances a lot.
Well, so do they have good boundaries with Stacy or not? Because they acknowledge her gifts. They don't they do reject them, or maybe he keeps the gun rack, I don't know, but they don't freeze her out. They don't drag her away. They don't like throw stones at her. They do practice the boundary of like, I'm not available for you. Like, I'm not your boyfriend. This is not our anniversary. We broke up. Are you mental? Get the net. Can the church learn from the way Wayne and Garth and those guys treat Stacy?
It's interesting. I was a little nervous, watching back a 30-year-old movie and was ready for all of the like, all right, these things don't fly today. These things aren't going to work. And compared to other things of the time, it holds up better than a lot.
It does.
It is weird that in a suburb of Chicago, there are 0 Black people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It doesn't the racial dynamics don't hold up, but I was with you, Mark. I'm one to be like, you can't treat women that, like, I will point out all the women things. And I was like, this holds up in a way that I was surprised by.
There were some things that, I mean, even saying it's mental, I mean, that has a new connotation that's different. But even when when Wayne and Cassandra are having that conversation on the rooftop, and she's back in the background again, trying to, make a presence. Even Wayne takes a little bit of responsibility, and he says, I don't remember the exact words, but it's kind of like, I maybe, participated in creating this.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was a part of this dysfunction. So it wasn't just like, she's a mess. It was like, I got to own part of my own stuff in that too.
Well, and the initial, like, a sphincter says what, is I rewatched every single Wayne's World sketch on Saturday Night Live and called it research. I also watched every Stefan sketch because I love Stefan. But the first one was A Homo Says What. That was 1986 Saturday Night Live. Pre-Terry Sweeney, probably, but A Homo Says What. And so even the shift to a sphincter, they're horny nerds, and that's honestly how I got over the kind of possessive sexism in it. Like, they don't know how to be in relationship. This is a sign of immaturity, not a sign of. It's still not appropriate, but it's not as malevolent as other
Well, and Cassandra handles her own stuff. Like in the bar, it wasn't like Wayne comes to the rescue. It's like she was kicking everybody and taking names, and she was always the most intelligent person in the room in terms of okay, and she was making those calls, and I thought that was strong. But you ask about Stacy, I don't know. I think there's a little uncertainty around that, but.
Okay, so I want to talk about Cassandra for a hot second, because in 92, as a 9-year-old girl, being who we all know loved Saturday Night Live, Wayne's World was not new to me. Church Lady, not new to me. Like the gifts of Dana Carvey, who is still my favorite. But you get this movie that's focused on guys. It's it's a male-centric movie, and that's fine. But the strongest character and the strongest person in that movie is easily Cassandra. She is a boss. And I remember thinking as a 9-year-old, oh, I can hold my own. I don't have to wait for the permission of someone else to be me and to succeed and to enjoy the passions of my life, whatever those may be at 9. She was just cool. And sexy, but not overtly. It wasn't a sexy to gain men. She felt sexy in what she was doing. And that's such a powerful message that I think we lose often, because now if you put a woman in a lingerie dress singing on stage, it immediately everyone's like, it's objectification. And it's nah, she's choosing her own stuff. She lives in her own loft.
She lives in her own loft. If frogs had wings, they wouldn't bump their ass when they hop.
It's definitely the kind of place I'm going to get when I move out of my parents' house, right?
Absolutely. Good for you.
I think the best line out of it, and I think we have some theories about Garth that we need to get out of it. I think the best line in the entire movie is, buy and destroy a local public access television show. I feel sorry for them, whoever they are. Neither here.
Well, I think that whole scene actually says a lot about the church.
Yes.
Because there is the whole steeple envy piece of hey, when I move out of my parents' basement, this is definitely the kind of place I'm going to get. It's kind of we're longing for that next thing. But
once we get to 500 members, then we can worry about our bylaws.
Right. Well, and then what is Cassandra says something about I feel so free up here, and Rob Lowe Benjamin says hey, it costs a lot to live this free. And gosh, I've just been soaking that in, and thinking about how does that register spiritually at this time. But then it leads to Garth's whole snooping around, and he finds the daily reminder, and it's just plainly there. And I thought, man, how much are we reading that the church is in trouble, or the church isn't connecting, or whatever, and we're just oh, I'm sorry for whoever that is. But it's hey, maybe that's us. Where are we connecting in the world, again, trying to break that fourth wall to really speak to people who don't really have a place for the church anymore.
Is there
go ahead.
Is Benjamin the villain in the movie?
Hold on, can we put a pin in that, because I have a question that goes on. Is when can we hear those truths? Because I think I registered with that moment too, and being like, "Ooh, that is the church." Like every day, all of us pastors have the like save the church memo on our, or whatever that might look like, and we need that be in the now. But like Garth is reading about himself, and he can't hear it. And I'm curious why the church can't hear that the state of the world that we are in.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes. I had board meeting this week, and sometimes I try to think about if Jesus was sitting at this board meeting, what kind of facial expressions would he be making? And it's the thought about this whole question. Do we not even recognize what we're doing because we're so caught up in whatever it is we're trying, the whole survival mentality versus thriving and being authentically who we are. I don't know. It's a challenge for sure, and I think we all have our blinders on in particular ways. I know I do, and so being sensitive to that, trying to open our eyes to see is always important.
Well, and it goes back to that Matthew test of who do you say that I am, right? Who each of those characters would say what Wayne's World is, the show. Is all very different and very true. And I think now I want to unpin Arthur's question, because who Wayne says that, Wayne's World is, who Garth would say, but who Benjamin says Wayne's World is, are all going to be different people. And so Arthur, if you want to ask your question, I think that really goes back to,
and I think it plays into one of our classic questions that we oftentimes ask, is Benjamin the villain, even though if he was an ice cream flavor? If Benjamin the villain,
Bryley.
Is Benjamin redeemable? Yep.
Well, the whole alternate endings, right? At the end. So when you get the final alternate ending, Wayne says, isn't it nice that we're all better people? Because even doesn't Benjamin admit something there at the end, like, hey, I've recognized that money isn't everything. And
it's close, but it's not everything.
Yeah. But there at least is one ending that improves everyone's understanding about the world, and so maybe that speaks into the is he the villain or not?
So I think the alternate endings is ultimately our eschatology, right? Because if it's everybody's doomed and everybody's destroyed and everything is going to fail because this world is broken and it's going to stay broken no matter what we do. So the house is going to burn down. Mark, I cut you off. I apologize.
No.
I was so excited, and I get excited. It's eschatological. And if we choose it's a happy ending, then it's a happy ending and people are capable of growing. Sorry.
No. That's great. That's exactly, I think I'm tracking with you. It's good.
I eat candy during interviews so that I shut my mouth. And even in this, I'm like, I'm going to take this up. Sorry.
Well, we're very excited to have Mark. It is our 100th episode, and it's Wayne's World. It's very exciting. I watched those last 3 episodes, and I was like, I think that it's a commentary on where the church was, where the church is, and where the church wants to be. And at any given time, we can be any one of those 3. I don't think we're always the one where it's like, you didn't think Wayne would get the girl, did you? We have seasons in which that is our ending of every worship, every board meeting, everything, right? Where it's just like, yeah, I did think Wayne was going to get the girl, but here you are, Benjamin, yet again. And we have seasons in which it's the big like Scooby-Doo like rug pull reveal, and it's silly and it's fun and it's reminiscent.
Withers.
It's Old Man Withers, and it's like, oh, this has been here the whole time, and okay, we're doing something new, we're trying things, it may not work, it's a callback, we get it, but is it the church we want to be? And then there's that end that's like, hey, we're all better people and we're all together, and and platonic partnerships between men are real and can be a thing. And isn't that the church, like that, I guess we hope for.
So, and we're also, what when they're having that scene and they're like, well, you go then. Well, I'm gone. Then you go, well, then I'll go. And I feel like that's a lot of church too. It's like, if we're getting this fight, but we can't quit the church. And we just keep at it. But yeah, it's an interesting connection.
Well, so I think Garth is an Enneagram 9. I actually think everyone in the movie is an Enneagram 9, because I think Mike Myers is probably a 4. Anyways,
Benjamin is absolutely a 3.
True. I don't think everybody's actually an Enneagram 9.
And I hate to say it. I hate to say it, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's the beauty of Garth, because so Mike Myers, when he wrote Wayne's World, it was the last sketch of the night in a show. And it was like, I think Ed O'Neill comes down and pretends to be a cop. And like, you can see the evolution of Wayne's World if you watch all the clips that are available from Saturday Night Live on YouTube. And he went to Dana Carvey, who was the powerhouse of the show, and he said, I want you to be my sidekick in this. Here's the script. No.
That's not the, can I correct you? Sorry.
Yes, no, I thought that's how it worked.
Okay, no. So
you're better with the Apocrypha.
I do love myself some apocryphal text. Wayne's World started as a solo show on Mike Myers' comedy tour, like when he was doing sketch comedy by himself.
He brought it in.
It was his, he never auditioned for SNL like normally people do. He was seen and got brought in. So they brought it in, and then Lauren was like, this has to be a movie sort of a thing, but because this was going to be one of my questions. He said it can't just be Garth or Wayne. You need a sidekick. And because Dana had Church Lady and we knew his power of making characters, it was suggested and then decided that it would be Dana. And then it was written for Dana. But that's how the whole thing came in.
So thank you. The only direction Mike Myers gave Dana Carvey was Garth really loves Wayne. That's it. And to get him to walk away, to get him to express his discomfort, to get him to he catches everything instead of 2/3 of it. It's the people who are like, I'm gonna leave, and then they go. We're still shocked by it, and instead, it's even saying I'm going to leave is this holy act of shooting a flare up, and it just kind of breaks my heart. Sorry, that was a weird digression on a weird digression.
No, but my question that I wanted to bring to this group is how are we made better, or how is the church made better when we hear that we need more? Because there's something there to, it worked as Mike Myers doing it by himself. Absolutely. Like that's what caught everyone's attention, but none of us can even imagine it without Wayne and Garth, right? It's party on Wayne, party on Garth. It is a call and response. Yeah. And so often I will use that in church one day. You bet I will. But so often we're like, we hear, you need to invite this person. You need to use this. You need to use that. And our heckles get up because it's not us. And it's not it's not the vision we may have cast. It's not whatever. And yet in this case, it's, I think, made exceptionally better. I think all the characters make this thing. Ed O'Neill's character is so random and says the most random things that you're like, I'm sorry, what? But it's fun. You know what I mean?
Only I get to talk to the camera.
Exactly. He breaks rules and you get to establish new ones and all of that. And so I'm curious what we as faith leaders, why sometimes we may put up, or say push against adding an extra cast member, but also where have we seen growth, or where have we gained when cast members, when new people have come on our teams to make the kingdom work easier, better, more experiential.
Yeah, I love Garth. Garth's got to be my favorite character in the movie because for all the reasons that we've already shared. But it was interesting to me. There's the scene where they're in the donut place again, and Ed O'Neill, like everybody has one of those in their church, right? I mean, all these people are in our church. We see and have experiences with all of these folks. But when they're trying to get him to talk to the girl, and he says, it's very subtly, but he says, I've got to be comfortable with me first. And I thought, always hang on to that. And there's part of me that just, you want to push people out there too and say, go, you've got everything that you need. And yet, in his own time and his own pace, he's like, I'm trying to be self-aware and self-confident, and it's an interesting piece, because what happens when Wayne quits the show, when they're doing the big deal and he's out. Yeah. And Wayne's there by himself, or Garth's there by himself. And he tries to distract, and then he bails kind of, but they're not a good solo act. Really, either one of them. Wayne's not all that interesting by himself. He's kind of funny for a little bit, but it's the gift of the interplay between them that I think is really sweet. So I think that's necessary. I've always felt like, probably too, as a 9, when you're trying to figure out who you are, because you can see everybody else's kind of perspective, but coming to claim your own is usually one of the last things that you do as an Enneagram 9. And I think, that's really important. But along the way, I think it's open for me to really appreciate people that come in with other dynamic energy that's different from mine. And when we've seen that, I think in teams that I've served on in churches, every place that I've been, I just much prefer and love that reality, because every voice connects differently with other people. And if all these people are in our churches, I'm not going to be the voice that speaks to everybody well. And we need to, elevate and find places to include every voice.
Well, 9s are going to save the world. And I stand by that. 7s are going to keep it interesting, but 9s are going to save it.
And what are we going to do?
3s are going to make it look good. No, 3s are going to find the most efficient, effective, and inclusive way to do it, because a healthy 3 is a marvelous person. There is an idea of merging, right, with 9s, and I think it's an important thing in there that Garth merges with Wayne, and they become something more than just Wayne or Garth. They are Wayne and Garth. With him, as always, is Garth is
I'm not a sidekick.
Right. I'm not a sidekick. Like it's instead an enhancement and an abundance, a something I say to my church every single time we have a board meeting in the end is, we're all that Christ has got at Riverside. Like this is it, better or worse, make it work. Not this is it because the board's not the entire congregation. It feels like it, but it's not. What's up, Riverside? We have too big of a board. But it's I think there's something about the community in Wayne's World that is surprising. The conflict comes from wanting to go on your own path. The conflict is putting one's needs in front of the needs of the many. And it's only through the restorative work of everybody working together to help someone become more of what they are that they're able to reconvene or find not repentance, restoration, reconciliation. Is this movie holy?
It's a whole sermon. It really it is the joy we've been looking for. It is deep. I think listen, I think that there's something to be said about Terry, whose main phrase to everyone is "I love you," and everyone gets really uncomfortable to say "I love you" back because there may or may not be the relationship until finally Garth is just like, just say thank you, like just accept it and like let's move forward. And I think that there's something there too of like you don't have to always find the comfort, like what it means to just receive. Like is that I love you? Is that God's grace? Is Terry Jesus just coming up being like I love you?
No, that was one of my, thinking of the question of where's the gospel, where most of that speaks in this movie. And that was really up there because it's a funny scene, right? Because he keeps saying, "I love you, man," and he's like, "I know." He's like, "No, I love you. I know," And then it takes everybody else saying, "Just say thank you," and then it's okay. And to me, that was such a gospel moment of. I mean, we always say Jesus loves you, and we all say, "I know Jesus loves me," but maybe it's the gratitude piece. Maybe we need to say thank you instead of "I know," because gratitude is what changes the world. I mean, what is it that propels you to do something more in the world? Ultimately, it's grace, which is gratitude, and it's thank you instead of "I know."
Karl Barth said, "Gratitude follows grace like thunder follows lightning," and it's one of my favorite phrases. I'm sorry I jumped on you a little bit there. We keep trying to get Karl Barth on the show, but apparently he's been dead for 40 years.
I have not been trying to get Karl Barth on the show.
Oh, no,
that is not where my energy has been. But we do need to be cognizant of the time because we could talk about this for literally ever.
I do want to note when you brought up Terry, Mark, my brain went to General Minister and President of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, Terry Hord Owens. And I thought, and friend of the show, and perhaps she is listening, and I thought, well, why hasn't Terry Hord Owens ever told me she loves me if that's her catchphrase? And I got really sad. And then I realized you were talking about Terry from Wayne's World.
We're two very different people, but kind of the same.
Well, and just, gosh, there's so many pieces, right? Because there's also the scene where they're trying to figure out what to do. And they finally say, we need help. And as soon as they do, it's everybody around them that says, we'll help, right? I mean, it comes in this whole spirit. And again, to your point, Arthur, about, that's the movie is about everybody coming together to work together to bring their gift to the table. And somehow that's how the world finds healing. But until we ask or until we realize that we can't do it on our own, we miss it.
And if your spiritual gift is full body cavity searches, by God, search those cavities. If you're saying something about the time.
No, it's fine. It's like I've just realized that, Two on One's next book is going to be The Gospel According to Wayne's World, coming out with Chalice Press. No, hey, Chalice Press, Two on One wants the second book it'll just be Wayne's World, and the three of us will write it. Anyway, no, but we are cognizant of the time. And Mark, thank you for finally saying yes. Thank you for coming, party on, Mark. Thank you for coming on to Two on One. Thank you. After literal years of me being like, hey, Mark.
All it took was a friend request and me being like, hey, I know people who think you're great. You should do Wayne's World.
I literally texted him, he goes, Mark, I accepted my friend request, and I literally text him back, ask him to be on Two on One because he's sick of me asking him.
Oh, it's so funny because it just popped up there and it's like, I know Arthur. I need to know Arthur better. And so I did that. And like I said, honestly, I think it was the need and it was the name, it's like Wayne's World. And I'm like, I don't know. I wouldn't have probably ever picked that if you said, hey, let's come talk about something. But once you did, this is just like so much else with the faith, right? It's like, draw your attention to something, study it a little bit, which will open your mind and heart to a whole new reality. But until you're provoked sort of in that way, sometimes we don't do that. So anyway, really honored to be with you. I love what you all are doing. And thank you for not only the fun that you create, but also the depth that is a part of that. I think that's a real special gift in this time. And I think as the world is still hungry, still searching for the same things that the humanity has always looked for, we need new ways in which to find it. And so I think just like what Public Access TV was is that the podcast of that time? I mean,
it is.
Yeah,
where people sort of create a venue to share love and thought and hope and interest. Here we are, so maybe good things are ahead of us yet.
Well, if you like this, Mark, boy, do I have a book for you coming out October 25th called Are You Still Watching?
Product placement.
Yeah, exactly. It's our product placement coming out with Chalice Press. It's 12 different 12 different authors and essays of the same nature with questions for you to take to your church and or home life study. I don't know. But as it is our final question, Arthur, do you want to ask the final question today?
Oh, may I?
Please.
What biblical character, parable, storybook, chapter, verse, thing from scripture speaks most to you about Wayne's World, or vice versa?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Please.
I was thinking, honestly, the whole I love you, man, that was a big piece there. But also the sense of, we're not worthy. That was such an iconic moment of that. And, you look at Luke 7. So there's a centurion who sends a posse to Jesus, right? Because his slave is ill. And there's a lot of other, layers to unpack there about what that means. But the group that goes to Jesus says, this person is worthy for you to come and do this healing. Speaking of the centurion, and the centurion's not comfortable with that. He says, you said what to Jesus? He says, I'm going to send another group and I'm going to tell him that I'm not worthy of you to come here and do this for me, for us. And he says, but if you do it from where you are, then I know and trust that I can be a part of that. And then the person is healed. And again, there's a lot of layers to what's going on there, but I think we get stuck in this wondering of worth and worthiness. And there's the whole sin shaming reality that says we're not worthy, right? I mean, that's such a big element of Christianity and a lot of different sects of our faith. And of course, we're promoting this here beautiful, unique person creation of God. Everyone is worthy. And I think it's our Episcopal brothers who have and sisters who have that prayer of humble access that they pray before they come to the table. That it sort of has this idea, God, I don't know that I should be able to participate in this, and yet you invite me to. And I think maybe that's where we all might find some gleaning and standing. It's not that we're not worthy, but it's this approach of humility that only when we approach it in that way is Jesus, because Jesus looks around when this happens, right? And he says, I haven't seen this kind of faith anywhere. And to me, it's like, it's the humility comes, and then we're teachable. Until we're humble, we're not very teachable. And so I think every person is worthy of this love. But I think it's humility that allows us to participate in the healing. Because especially even in this day, right? I mean, when you see all the tragedy going on in the world and all these shootings and things that are happening, and we're like, God, would you just send? Would you just go? Would you just go take care of that? And I think God's maybe waiting for us to say, hey, I'm ready to participate in that. And Jesus might say, that's kind of faith that we need, the humility that can go and be that presence. Because Jesus never goes then and physically heals that person in presence. It's the healing that comes in the relationship and the community that's already there. So I don't know. That was a theme that stuck out to me, especially given the we're not worthy. It just we hear it, we see it, we've done and been through that.
You heard it here first. Mark thinks that Alice Cooper is Jesus. So
he plays a really great Herod in the John Legend version of Jesus Christ Superstar.
No, that was perfect, Mark. That was it is the theme. I think that who knew the theological depth of Wayne's World? Us, duh. Duh. Arthur, you want to go?
No, I'd like you to go because I think I know your answer. I can guess.
You probably do, know it. Garth is the Holy Spirit. Garth is a little bit funny and messes things up. He's constantly present, leads when he needs to, takes a step back when he doesn't, is connected to the entire thing, and is a guiding hand in most spaces. And when he talks directly to camera, you feel it. You know exactly what is happening, and it's often a truth telling, a way in which to bring some levity, but always truth to the moment, and be in the now. And I think that most often we look for Jesus to the future, we look for God to the past, but that Holy Spirit is the one in which we are called to embody now, whether or not that's the truth, but for your relationship with Jesus and God. But I think that there is truth to the be in the present, be in the now moment of Garth's Holy Spiritness.
Spiff.
Love that.
That was a haiku. I'm gonna play into that. Garth is the Holy Spirit. Wayne is the Apostle Paul, and Cassandra is Thecla. Because Paul is acerbic, and when he becomes needy and too much of an individual, it harms his community. And it's only when he is focused on the gospel, which is ultimately participating with the Holy Spirit to create something in community that is better for those who are involved in it, does Wayne actually matter. Wayne by himself is kind of a jerk. And there's that'll be my contribution to the Wayne's World book: Pauline theology, right sizing, and Wayne Campbell.
I'm here for it.
Yep. And also Wayne had a variety of hairnets and name tags, as Paul did making tents. That is the 100th episode of 2 on 1. Once again, I remind you that we're sponsored by Jeff Wonder Designs, celebrating 17 years of making ordinary time extraordinary. We're in Eastertide, and I didn't come up with something marvelous, but you can look at all of the marvelous things he's come up with about Easter at Jeff Wunrow, JEFFWUNROW.com. We are...
No, use our code 2on115 for 15% off your entire Stole order when you do go to Jeff Wunrow Design. And while you're on the internet, head on over to your local bookstore and pre-order Are You Still Watching? Using pop culture to tune in, find God, and get renewed for another season. Available through Chalice Press, October 25th.
Absolutely. But until the next time, Mark, thank you very much for joining us and for the great 100th episode. I am the Reverend Arthur Stewart.
I am the Reverend Stephanie Kendall.
I'm the Reverend Mark Bryley.
Hey, and this is 2 on 1. Bye, Deuces. Fish gills. Okay. Get more 2 on 1 at twoonOneproject.com.